Hello, everyone. It is Cheryl Hickerson, and I am the CEO of Females and Finance, an organization that is dedicated to bringing in more women into the profession of financial services and financial technology. Now, started this a few years ago in Judy Hoberman's kitchen. That's a true story. And she just happens to be here. So I'm kind of glad she was. She showed up, but it was like this crazy idea. And now it's actually here. But here's the thing. I was getting really tired of the numbers staying the same. And every time somebody would come back and report, it was literally the exact same numbers. Like the years are growing. Trust me, I've covered all the gray here. The years are going by, but the number is staying the same. So I really wanted to quantify how we can make that change happen. And then I get introduced to Jen Rutley at Hidden Insights Group and watched some stuff that she was doing. And I was like, oh, I think we can figure this out together. And so I'm going to actually let Jen run most of this webinar today. She's traveling, so I'm going to pull up her presentation for today. We are recording this, so if anybody, if you're watching it on the replay right now, that is okay. I understand time. Feel free to reach out either to me or to Jen with any questions you might have. But Jen, you're up. Take it away. I'm going to share my screen.
Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, no, so I'm really excited. I think thanks for everybody for joining us today to talk about the pledge. We just launched this hot off the press, right, a few weeks ago at Riskalyze. Excel is part of where Cheryl and Beth are going this week. And so we wanted to do today was have an opportunity for folks to really engage, ask questions, and talk about the pledge and make sure that there's clarity around it. So the name of this is You Signed the Pledge, Now What? So I don't know, are folks on the call, has everyone here signed the pledge or at least been exposed to the pledge in some way? Yeah. Anybody not? Yeah, which is fine if you haven't. Yeah. Okay, so a few folks haven't. So what we want to do is, Cheryl, will you go to the next slide for me?
I will. So I was getting ready, I was trying to be like double agent there and put the link to the survey, but that's okay.
No, you can do that. You want to do that?
Yeah, I'm going to. Well, you go ahead and talk.
So what we wanted to do today was talk about, so what is the Fearless Pledge?
I don't know why it did that. Sorry.
That's okay. So what is the Fearless Pledge? Wanted to get an level set with everybody. How are you feeling? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Anything else going through your mind? I've done a lot of research, primarily on the female advisor or financial advisor space. But I'm sure a lot of these things can scale outside of that within financial services and fintech. So we can talk a little about some of the tips that we've heard from women about what makes them successful in the workplace. And then spend also a little bit of time on what are some of the programs Females in Finance has that can help with folks who are trying to get their pledge in motion. And then we'd love to hear if there's anything else that you think would be important to helping organizations in this space. Okay. Yeah, and Cheryl just put the link to the pledge to the
done
in the chat for those of you who want to go look at it.
Absolutely. Right. Done.
All right, questions so far? We good? Yeah. All right. So what is the Fearless Pledge? Let's go to the next slide, Cheryl.
All right.
All right. So the purpose of the pledge, as Cheryl said, I was doing a bunch of research around what makes women successful in the workplace and some of the big challenges that they have. Cheryl said, hey, this is really important that we figure out what can we do to actually move the needle on this stuff. Because I agree, Cheryl, I looked at so many different, there's so many different data points because nobody actually does, nobody really is accountable, I think, for these numbers, and nobody is really aggregating them in a consistent way. So the data is all over the place. But I think the one consistency you see is the needle has not moved at all. Over the last 5, 10, 15 years, the needle has not moved when it comes to financial services. So what we wanted to do was find ways to bring the community in together with the goal of hiring, mentoring, training, and advancing 100,000 women by 2025, okay, which is a big ask. But I think, again, we're not just talking about hiring. And I think that's where we have to be careful. A lot of times people are like, hiring, we're talking about mentoring, training, and advancing women who are already in the industry as well, because that's super important to continuing to retain them, okay? So there's 2 ways to participate in the Fearless Pledge. You can do as an individual, you can do as an organization, and if you're a leader of an organization, you could do both. And so if you're an individual, you basically are pledging to do something in the next year that moves the needle. And you can do that by donating your time in the form of mentorship or volunteering for females in finance. So if you are someone who feels like you could mentor a woman, we're asking you to do an hour a month. So 12 hours throughout the year, and be accountable for that. If you want, the other option is to provide money. So you can become a member of Females in Finance, donate money to Females in Finance, but really helping us with the programming that supports how we bring more women and help women within the industry. And we'll get to some of those programs in a minute, but that's really the individual piece. We've kind of asked folks to say whether you want to donate time or provide money to support the programs. Everybody good so far? Questions? Yeah?
I'm watching the chat box.
Thank you. On the organization side, we have similar things on the time and the money. And I think with organizations, we're hoping not just for mentorship at the individual level, but putting some more mentorship programs in place. Because again, if we're looking at someone who maybe is in a senior role at the organization level, they have a little bit more influence over those things. So we've got the time, we've also got the money. So at organizational levels, there's ways to get certain levels of membership within Females in Finance, or just make a donation. The third one though is really, when you go into the survey, it says jobs, but it's a little bit more than just jobs. It's really about how do we look at DEI policies related to hiring, paying, and advancing women, and working with organizations to say, you know, when you're hiring, are you getting a slate of candidates who at least are third women versus, you know, just kind of randomly you get who you get. When it comes to paying, are you looking at your equal pay policies and making sure that there are benchmarks and other things going on in that space? And now there are actually sounds like states who are starting to put those policies in place in full transparency. And then lastly, when you're looking at promotions, are we looking at them in an equitable way? How are we making sure women are really in the right conversations to be eligible for some of those more senior roles? So that's what we think that one is really important from that overall policy perspective. Okay. Questions? Good so far?
I think good so far.
Okay. All right. So, actually, you know, we can just stay here. So I guess this is just more open to the folks who are on the call. Any feedback on this, how you're feeling about it for those of you who have signed the pledge? Any thoughts for us on, are you excited about something like this? Is this something that it makes you nervous because of the commitment? We would just love to get any feedback you have.
And there is no wrong feedback. I want to make certain we're really clear on that, because this is, you know, we're learning alongside with you. We can keep adopting and adapting as we move through this. But I do want to say a couple of things. One is that our organization in 3 years went from like 100 members to 4,100 members. I still haven't advertised this group. It is 100% word of mouth. So when people say to me, and trust me, plenty of people have said to me, 100,000 people is a crazy number. Crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, crowd anything, when you bring each person to provide a bite-sized piece of something, we can build a mountain of negative, or we can build a mountain of good. You've seen it both ways happen, right? Things have just shot off and gone in either direction. And we couldn't have built this by word of mouth if it weren't for people who volunteered or voluntarily told people, or voluntold some people, it does happen in organizations, about what we do. And one of the things that I think is really critical that I want to touch on when Jen talks about time and mentoring, we get a lot of calls that sound like this on the down low. Hey, Cheryl, I am thinking about leaving my job, but I don't want to tell anybody. I want to stay in financial services, but it's not paying me, or I don't know what the pay is, we're doing a lot of things behind the scenes that sometimes it's really difficult to quantify what that looks like, if that makes sense. It's hard to qualify it. This is where the pledge comes in, and we finally have a way to say, even anonymously, we were able to help X amount of people. When the TD Schwab, for example, fallout, I got so many calls. I was working like night and day trying to place these individuals, and was very successful with 100%. No, with a large majority. Yeah. Of the ones who called me and said, hey, I need to know, let's introduce you and get you there. So I want you to see real things that happen. And what needs to also be told are the stories of the people who did the good work too. I think that there are people a lot of times, which is great for those who are out there being very good stewards of time and money and jobs. But if we don't hear what those stories are, what they look like, it is very difficult sometimes for others to build something that they don't understand how it worked. That's the other thing I think that Jen's going to be talking a lot about in this today. And I want you to feel free to share. So it's just sort of some of the behind the scenes stuff that we do that you guys may not necessarily always get to see.
This is Linda. I'm totally stoked about the pledge. I love the fact that, volunteering of mentoring hours is an option, right? So not every firm can afford the cash. But I really think that there's huge value in that. And I think so often what happens in the first 5 years, a woman is in the financial services industry, the only people that they know are the people that they work with, and they're really contemplating leaving the industry. And to have a trusted voice that they can talk to somebody about what are the pros and cons of staying in the industry, we have to improve not just our recruiting, but our retention rates. And I think mentoring is the answer for that. So I'm stoked about that. And I agree with you. The majority of times that you hear from people are when they're contemplating, or leaving a job or something. And the more people that we can saying, no, the industry is changing, be part of this change, don't abandon ship. I personally would be very delighted. So kudos
Same.
to you.
Thanks, Linda. Awesome. Any other?
Real quick, too, for the men on here. Thank you for being here. This is so incredibly important. We believe in male allyship. I say all of the time that just because I'm focused on dolphins doesn't mean I'm killing whales. We need you all. We're, trying to get this to go, and the trajectory will get there faster and further with help than without. So I want to make certain we acknowledge that, because sometimes it's a little scary, I think, for men to show up to calls where they're like, oh boy, here we go. Are they going to say? Absolutely not. And I think that that's where we differ as an organization a lot of times, because we do want to partner and work with you. We do want to know how you get to win and I get to win, so all the clients win. And that's what equity is. Truthfully, that's what it is. So for the guys that are here, thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's very important.
I just want to say something, please. Jennifer, I agree with you that the needle has not moved, because when I spoke at LAMP in 2012, I had made a statement about only less than 10% of the people in the audience were female. And these were all the leaders. And 6 months later, when I posted in their journal and I said, now remember, there were less than 10%, and someone called me and said, it's actually 11 now. So your first instinct is to giggle, but the truth of the matter is they're watching it. And so, I agree. I think Cheryl's doing an amazing job, holding space for everyone, especially the women in the industry. And by bringing the men in, we have to deal with men. Men are the ones that open doors for us. And that's the way it is. And it's probably going to be for a long time. But I will say that the mentorship is so important, because during the pandemic, I worked with a group of women in one of the big companies. They were all ready to leave. All of them were ready to leave, because how do you see people? You can't go anywhere. You can't be in front of people, blah, blah, blah. And so we talked it out and we talked it out. And by the end of 6 months, all 6 were staying. And one of them, her business went up 174%. Only because she had a mentor. So I think that if you've never been a mentor, be one. If you have been, just do more of it. And if you've never had one, become that person. And that's what I did for my company. I became the person that was missing in my career in this industry. So kudos to both of you for doing this together.
That's great, Judy. And it's the data that I have, what we've seen, and it's in one of our slides coming up, but I'll just say it now. Mentorship is the most important thing to the success of someone in their first 4 years, is what we got from our data. We had a number of items, and we asked advisors, female advisors, but we asked them to rank them of importance. And in most of the other groups, it really was work-life balance and things like that. But for the first 4 years, it was mentorship. So we can't say enough about how important it is to get women off the ground and have community and someone that they can go to with questions and ideas. So
yeah, and 65% of all women that have been mentored become mentors. That's 65% of all females in finance. So just think of it that way. So they'll become mentors.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that females in finance can offer, we can kind of all work together, is what does a good mentorship program look like, and how do we make sure people know how to mentor? Because I also think sometimes people sign up with the right intention of being a mentor, but they don't know what the role really requires, right? And so there's some work there I think that we can do as a group to really enable people and empower people in that space.
That's awesome,
Awesome.
Jen. That's the first I'm hearing of that. And I, having kicked off lots of mentor groups, that's so critical. So stoked about that too.
Awesome.
I think
Anybody
that,
else?
yeah.
Hi, Sydney.
Hi, how are you? I think that
How are you?
mentorship is a great way to get women to talk to one another because as somebody who recruits advisors every day, I have a really hard time getting women on the phone. I think that old, cold call recruiting model, to whether it be to bring women into the industry or to get them into better situations, it doesn't work, right? Because I have a really hard time just getting a female on the phone to even just talk to me and to get to a platform where I can start establishing that trust. So I think mentorship is a great option for that, but maybe we can drum up some other ideas of ways to, have like more genuine, authentic conversations where it doesn't feel like they're being recruited, because I know that's not tasteful or appealing.
I think that's one of the things we do well, Sydney, is the referral system that we have in place for every member. We want them 10 deep with some, within our organization. I'm really conscientious of, and cognizant of how many people have I personally, like I hold myself accountable to introducing. And that's where the trust, that you're right, it is established, and it is people starting to talk to one another and going, well, maybe I need to listen to this person. Whereas would that have been the same result of you just cold reaching out versus warmly? I don't know. Women are different. Trust me. I talked to 4,137 of them. It's a little different. So I agree.
Cool. All right. So we have a few other, is there anybody else who wants to add a thought before we? It's nice to have conversation. I don't want to talk at you guys, girls, people, all. All right. So we had a few tips. And again, these are things that the data has told us that really work. And as I said earlier, a lot of my work has been with female financial advisors, but I do think many of these can convert outside of that space. So why don't we go to the next slide, Cheryl?
Okay.
So the first one, and I think this is really important. I see a lot of people jump to number 2 here, or even number 3, and they're like, I'm going to go recruit women. We really need women. Let's go get some women. And I think before you do that, there's really an important piece, which is assessing your culture and making sure that you really are ready and supportive of women, and that you're not just going to go put a bunch of effort into recruiting women who are just going to then leave. So what we think is really important here is to make sure that you look at some of the characteristics of organizations that do well with women. So again, do you have work flexibility? And we're going to get into a lot of those things next, but it's just, I understand the eagerness. And I think a lot of times organizations are thinking, oh, we really need to go down this diversity path. But first, make sure that you actually have good retention with the women that you already have, or if this is the first time you're bringing in women, that you're really looking to do in a collaborative way. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Have you seen the opposite before, where people are like, we just got to go hire some women?
I bet
Yeah.
Judy has.
And it doesn't work, right? It's very risky. So then we do have set recruiting goals. So again, without goals, how are you really going to measure? So thinking about what are you really trying to achieve? Where can you bring women in? And hopefully not just in operational roles. I think the industry does a terrible job of putting women in operational roles and putting male counterparts in leadership roles and decision-making roles. So ideally, as we're looking at some of those leadership roles, where can we set recruiting goals for the year to say this is where we could really use a female perspective, because it will create some diversity and really bring in some of the different, skill sets and values that women bring to the table. And then this third one is important. I think going back to what you were saying, Sydney, a little bit too, on like, what is your value proposition to women? What are the things? And I think what I've learned working with sometimes with business owners, whether it's financial investment firm owners or other groups like that, is a lot of time they're just using a generic value proposition for men and for women. And maybe they're starting with compensation as a value proposition and the idea of making lots of money. But you know what? From the data that we have, that's not what most women are looking for. They're much more looking for mission and purpose and community and all those good things. So thinking about how you're positioning your value proposition so that women hear the things that are going to resonate with them is more important than kind of just having a standard value proposition. And then, of course, kind of going back to number one, your value proposition needs to be authentic. So if you say you have something, you better have something, right? So if you say you have a mentorship program, you better have a mentorship program. It can't just be some sort of, haphazard sort of thing. Questions on any of these three make sense?
I think one of the things that what you just brought here about culture, the more transparent you can be on your website about who you are and what you stand for, the better.
Yeah.
Women do their homework. Like we just do our homework. And I feel as if there's a lot of hidden, I want to say hidden Mickeys, like if you've been to Mickey Mouse, if you've been to Disneyland, it's like, why is it 7 clicks deep on a website?
Mm-hmm.
Like it should just be so transparent. I should be able to just click on it and see this is what you stand for. And I don't want to hear the jargon anymore. I don't want to see 2 people shaking hands and have a beacon, out looking over the ocean, and just be real. The person, and I will quote one company that I think does a really good job of that. It's Potomac Fund with Manish Kata. Go to his website, go to Potomac Fund and look at their value statement. It would floor you what they say. I was so enamored. In fact, I was so inspired to put our value statement out on our website based on his work, because I thought I should do that too. So try to make it more transparent.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
while you're on the website, I did want to also just highlight something. Hopefully you have women on your executive team, so you'll see a picture there. But if you don't, make sure, like if you're showing interviews, etc., that you're showing that there's other women in the organization. So that's really important, not just your value prop and what you promise them, but if you can get a 30-second video of a successful female financial advisor and have her talk about the culture, your recruitment rates will go up like crazy.
Optics matter for sure.
It's a great point. I was interviewing somebody and they said they had to ask to see a woman, like in the interview process, to make sure they were really there, So like, that just seems like so obvious as someone who would be in a recruiting experience, but it wasn't. So it's a great point. Okay, let's go to the next one. So work schedule flexibility. And I think we can call this work-life balance as well. But, as we've moved into COVID and we've seen all of these different ways of working, work schedule flexibility, being able to work later hours, not having to do an 8 o'clock or 7:30 phone call because maybe kids are going to school. Women do take the burden of a lot of the care in the house. And so making sure that you have that work schedule flexibility and that no one feels shamed or that they're missing something important because they have to deal with some of this is super important to women. And so building that in, letting people work from home if they need to, et cetera, is I don't think we all learned this over the last 2 years. I don't think I need to say this one too much, but it's with, according to our data, 91% of female advisors said that allowing for flexible hours was either critical or important to their success. So, and work-life balance was overall the most important thing for women as far as their success goes. So, making senior women visible. So we just talked about this one. It's very important, whether it's on your website, whether it's during the interview process, whether it's when you're having leadership team meetings or having people on panels, making sure those women are visible. Sets a great example for other women in the industry. And then the mentorship, we already talked about this one too. So can't say enough how important it is, especially in the early years, to have a good, strong mentorship program. So this one we've already covered. Look at that. We were well advanced. We're mind readers. Anything else on these three? I know we've already hit most of them. The flexibility, I feel like we all know that one, right? And I want to add another one to this one because I think it's also super important, and this came up a lot in our conversations on the work-life balance, is policies. I think a lot of women may come into certain parts of this industry and have no idea what the maternity policy is or paternity policy is. And if it's something that's not great, it doesn't matter. At least make it explicit so they know what it is. I think the challenge that we've seen with a lot of women is they have no idea what's going to happen when they have a child because there's no policies in place. And so then it's really stressful to figure out how to live in that world of ambiguity. So what I've heard from them is at least let me know what the policies are and don't keep it completely ambiguous, or I have to figure it out myself by asking other people. So, okay. All right, let's go to the last one. So learning. So this one, we were surprised actually at the data of how many women said learning and development was super critical to their success. And I think it kind of comes back to this continuous desire to improve. And it might relate back to some of the confidence challenges women have, right? So we know that women, especially some of the imposter syndrome and all that crazy stuff, but feeling like you are credible and that you can sit at a table. We've talked to lots of women who got their certified financial planning, their CFP early in the process because they thought it would give them more credibility to be at that table. But there's a tie to learning and education and really the proactive side of it for women that is important to how they advance and feel credible and feel confident in the industry. So providing learning opportunities, whether that's paying for certifications or paying for different types of courses that women might want to take, or making them accessible, or even, some level of stipend for education is a differentiator for women because they really are looking to continue to advance their knowledge and prove themselves. Yeah, everyone gets that one? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Community involvement. So this can be female groups like Females in Finance. This can also be bringing women into events because, again, for financial advisors, women typically have relationships with other women, especially in that area where a lot of female advisors and women who may be spouses or others maybe get overlooked. So finding places where you can bring women together, and men too, but really bringing women together to make those connection points, because another thing that we saw in so much of the data was how important community is for women. Women do not want to be a lone wolf out on their own trying to figure out how to build a business by themselves. They really, whether it's relationships with their clients, relationships with other people, relationships, the mentorship, there is a level of community that's super important for women. So the more you can embrace that and build that community within the organization, the more likely they are to stay and be successful. And the last one is succession. So again, we see women leave the industry, and if they don't have a successor, then we've just lost a woman. We haven't retained. So the more we can do to help bring in new talent and then match folks up who might be great for those mentorship roles or those coaching roles, or if there's someone, especially in the female advisor space, who is very successful, bringing a woman in to learn and eventually take over that practice, keeps us at neutral. Doesn't get us up, but it keeps us neutral. So when we see that succession happening, we don't lose folks to, whether it's retirement or other things that they want to go do. So those are the 9 that we've seen a lot of data around. Questions on any of these or thoughts? Good. Maybe it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because going back to the learning, when I interviewed the women, when I first started the organization, how many of them asked me, were we going to have an educational component, or, is there learning involvement? Like they voluntarily were telling me they want this. And I'm not at all surprised when I speak to women, how many of them are designated versus men.
Yeah. I heard it over and over again, especially for younger women, because they just felt like helped them get that edge in a conversation with someone where they had to prove themselves.
Yeah.
So
the Wharton School of Business, I don't know if you saw this, reported that they had more women join their business school this year than men for the first time ever.
Awesome.
For 2023. Yeah. So the education part.
Yeah, well, they have a new woman president too, I believe.
Yeah.
At the school too. So I'm sure that's also a great thing for them. Okay. So that's some of the data that we have. We have tons more data around women, especially as it relates to financial advisor, the financial advisor industry. But wanted to at least kind of put these out there for folks as you're starting to think about, where you can kind of move the needle and how to do it. And I guess I'll turn it over to you now, Cheryl. I'll talk a little about how can females in finance help.
Yeah. And Linda had a client call, so she apologized. She had to go hop to do that. So I just wanted to let her, So this is only some Because if I had actually put everything in here, the page would be overwhelmed, very overwhelmed. So how can females in finance help you meet your goal? And you can help us in turn as well, because that's what we want, is a win and a win. So our 4 pillars of promise are hiring, mentoring, training, and advancing women in financial services and financial technology. The hiring support, we have had a very successful career center we opened up this year. It is powered by Stephanie Roberts at Humans Being Resources. She is phenomenal at placing people and getting positions out there. But we also have, so when you go into that structure, you'll see some of the jobs she has and some that are industry wide. If you have a job that you would like to hire, let's say a woman for, please go on to our career center and fill out the form, and we'll get that listed out there. In addition to that, we're going to have a recruiting roundtable as part of our roundtable offering in our masterminds we used to call for 2023, that Stephanie's going to be talking about. How do you recruit women? What does that look like? And I think that that's really important, the dialogue, because what we think is going to work doesn't. I'm going to tell on Judy for a quick second. We were on a Sip and Savor weekly networking. One of our male allies came into it and he said, I put this out there. I can't get any women to respond. And without missing a beat, Judy's like, pull that ad up. I want to look at it. Let me. It was like this deep, Judy, I think the ad was. And by the time we got done, it was like this big, had a video of a woman talking about the culture of the company. And then that became a much better way to recruit people. So that hiring support that we're providing is really critical. If you're not getting good women candidates, please use our career center, use our recruiting roundtable. Mentoring. We have mentor rooms on our new Facebook group that are all set up, ready for mentors to come and mentees to use. We have weekly networking where there's just some natural mentoring that's going on anyway. And then we have a mentor matching program that we're going to be starting in 2023. People can come and say to me, hey, Cheryl, I'm looking for a good example of that today, and has been for a very long time. I've been working with the CFP board because we get a lot of their candidates who they have a natural mentoring program there that they mentor match with, but they want people in our community to do that. So I'm having to go back to them and say, hey, this is great and everything. However, not really getting what we need to work together, because they want to use the women as our mentors and they want to be mentees and vice versa. So we're going to build that out a little bit more. Our training center has become, it's too overwhelming to even put. So I just put 3 up here because we have so many things going on all the time, from fintech demos on how to use your software to network up, to that we bring usually specific training for that as well. But our education centers are going to be a new piece that's coming out in 2023, partnering with the American College. Hasn't even been announced yet. Super excited about that. They are going to be really providing a lot of the structure around that. And I've got buy-in from 5 professors at universities already who want to be part of the construct around building that education center up for our young people. So that's really important as well. But guess what? We need support in our organizations, because I can't run everything. I have run everything for a very long time. We are taking committees though to help run some of these programs. And that's where some of that give back from your side of it will help you meet whatever your pledge component is around your time and mentoring. Our marketing workshops, we have them weekly. We do a lot of training around how to get yourself out there and amplify in very genuine ways. I'm a pretty good marketer. I have some awards back here say I do that job really, really well. But then we want to bring experts in specific areas so that you guys can get it, not just from me telling you, but from them as well, showing you step by step, how do you get there? So how does Judy Hoberman write a book, for example? How does, Sydney get out and get to speak on a stage someplace? We're going to be talking a lot more about that going forward, because that's where we need to have a lot of training. And then, of course, our weekly roundtables, which I've already mentioned. We have insurance. We have financial wellness. Actually, Elizabeth Moss, or Beth Moss, who's on here, runs our insurance. Tony Stewart runs our financial wellness mastermind, or we used to call, they're now roundtables. These are all ways for you to get more training on how to do, not just, I hate to say doing your job well, because I don't think that's really what it is, your purpose, living out your purpose, really getting your greatness out into the community so it speaks to people so they can find you. And then our advancement support, again, going back to that career center, people who can want to advance in their career, but then a practice management roundtable run by those who work. A big majority of our base is registered investment advisors. about 60+%. That's a lot. We have to do things that are very specific. Now, I have to tell you, I was so excited because here we are at Riskalyze making the announcement of the Fearless Pledge at the Fearless Investing Summit. Aaron Klein signs the first, pledge on there. 100,000, people. Everybody says to me, I'm crazy right off the bat. Just so you know, I'm used to being told I'm crazy. It's okay. Do you know, nobody was more excited than me to see it, the Schwab impact, that there was a report comes out in the next 5 years, registered investment advisors need 75,000 people in order to just keep it maintained, like to get that tip that nose, like Jen said earlier, tipping it to go up, the trajectory up. I sat back and mic dropped. I said, yes, I know. I might just be small, but I am very mighty when it comes to the numbers and figuring out how do we get there. So I go back to our bite-sized pieces, right? How to eat the elephant, as we've been told for thousands of years, I feel like at this point. That's what I'm asking you to do based on our pillars of promise around these 4 areas, and then allow us to help support what you're doing individually in your neck of the woods, but also what we're doing collectively to go out in our environment. Because if we don't, I can tell you this. I spoke with an actuary who said for us just to maintain our demise, it's going to take us replacing, finding 3 people to replace. If we want to have sort of a status quo, that means we each have to be responsible for 5 people. But to tip the nose, and remember, it only took 1 extra bulkhead to sink that Titanic. Boop, it went down. Yes, it did. Well, in order to do that, it means we have to have 10. That means Jen has to be responsible for 10 people. Judy has to be responsible for 10 people, etc. So that's where, initiatives like this are so critical. And then what we want to do is quantify and qualify what it is that you're doing based on our pillars of promise, and then report back not only to yourselves, but to financial services at large. This is what's been working. We do keep your information extremely private unless you say to me explicitly and actually sign something that says I can talk about you. It's just between you and us, and then Jen and Cheryl. So we can figure out what you're doing so well and then apply some of that in other places anonymously, unless you explicitly tell us, hey, I want you to mention us. A good example of that has been Riskalyze, who has been very transparent and said, we want you to tell people what's working for us. Beth and I were standing in line at Riskalyze when they talked about their 9 value proposition. In order for any person, because one of the questions that came up at the conference was, how is every single person here so amazing? Jen was at that conference. Tony was at that conference. Sydney, every single employee is literally top notch. How is that possible? They have a 9 value system based hiring process, and they have to go through like 3, Beth, was it 4 sets of people before you even get an offer?
Yeah, I think it was through 3 sets of people, and it really was
and they're not even the
culture-based.
area that you work in.
Yep.
It has to be because they want to make sure you are not a culture clash. You have to meet that. Those are wonderful hiring, because the people at that company are above and beyond some of the nicest people, not just nice, but like quality human beings out there. Well, wouldn't that process be really interesting to see how we could apply that to a smaller company, like whether it's my own or even at Sydney's office? They have 180 advisors at their office. That'd probably be pretty valuable for them to know how to, get the right people. That's what we're talking about, taking that data back, extrapolating what we need out of it. That's Jen's job, not Cheryl's job, just so we're clear. And she's very smart like that. But taking it through this area and then applying it to your business, because I always believe in adopt and adapt. Adopt the principles, adapt them to your needs. Did I hit it? There's so many other things on here. We're not going to go through them all, but these are the high point. And for some of you on the call right now, I'm really curious. And I'm going to sort of call on you. You don't even know I'm going to ask you this, but Sydney's a younger generation coming in. Just so you know, we skew younger at Females in Finance, 34, 35 to 44. That's our average age. That's pretty young when you think about our profession. Sydney, for you being in this organization as you've been, what has been some of your feedback being a younger advisor? Because one of the questions I get are we catty? No. Number two, that we get, that we're only going to be about ourselves. So they think women are only about ourselves. Have you found that to be the case
That's
at
my
all?
exact opposite experience. So I've had to act as a
Exactly.
sponge the past 2 years because I'm very new to the industry. I've only been in the industry for 2 years. And this has been one of the greatest resources for me in that regard. I've learned so much. And I feel people have been very generous with their time.
Yeah.
A lot of connections from Cheryl and Females in Finance. Everyone's booking on my calendar and they have the time for me. So I've been really grateful for that. That's the exact opposite experience of what you just said.
Yeah.
So-
And I do get it quite a bit. Even at the conference we were at, people were asking, like, do the women get along? Yeah, so we do. Is every woman get along? No. Does every person get along? No. It's not supposed to, but we have an overall respect for what we're trying to accomplish, that it works. It just works. But we've been pretty structured in how we got there. So I just like to address the obvious questions because I'm going to get them. I get them every week. Those are the main two that I get. And I'm always open to anything that we're not doing. Come to me and say, hey, if you had this, I will totally entertain it. And if it's doable, I make it happen. If it's not, or I'll say, you should run that and it could be part of your pledge. That may be possible. That's something we would say. But this gives you an overarching idea of just how much is going on, because it's just so difficult sometimes to tell people behind the scenes what's actually happening, because a lot of it's like in the intricate details of personalized, a need for Judy versus a personalized need for Beth or Sydney. It's going to be different. That's it. I don't do anything else. Any questions? I'm very excited about the education center. Y'all don't even have, by the way, for anybody who's new here, did you know that we offer medical benefits at our membership, at paid membership levels? You get access to a group health plan. And that's become extremely attractive. The reason why we did it, pandemic, we found out a lot of people lost their jobs, those benefits. And I thought, what can we do to support our members? And so we actually refiled our entire company. That was super fun. That was sarcasm. So that we could go out and get into a group plan. So anybody from our basic member and above get access to our membership, our major medical plan access. And for me, somebody like me, it took me off marketplace at $1,205 a month down to $605. That was significant savings for our home. So that's what my intention was. And then we build on that based on where your membership level comes into. So I tell everyone, we're still providing a lot of really good service, like real services back to you, even though some of the things we're going to be asking from you are going to help our membership in financial services at large too. Okay, now I'm done.
So I think the last part was just, we've talked a lot about health, tips, and we've talked about what Females in Finance can offer. And we just wanted to open up, is there anything else as you all are, living these day to day and trying to figure out how we hire, mentor and train and advance more women? Is there other things that Females in Finance can do, or my organization, Hidden Insights Group, can do to help support you? Obviously, Cheryl and I have talked about this a lot, and Beth and Tony, but would love any input folks have is what else do you need in order to be successful in this space?
One thing that I'm curious about, and I know it's been something that we've talked a lot about, but maybe not everybody else is aware of, is how we're here to actually support one another and how often we'll be checking in and continuing to connect like this, to have open dialogue forum about the struggles that we're experiencing or what areas we're falling short on, or that we need to have additional insight as to how to promote something that is going to be more impactful. So can you give everybody a little bit of a scope as to what being part of the Fearless Pledge will look like going forward, as far as everybody connecting who's participating?
One of the things I'm going to add on to that really quick, Beth, is that we will have a reporting area on the Fearless page site that you can report those hours that you served, or how many people you helped. One of the questions I got asked was, oh, this is not an exact science. Of course it's not. How do we get every single, but I think within reason. I saw one time there was an article from Time Magazine about honesty of people. How honest are people? Are they not? 85% of people are actually pretty honest. They actually kind of tell you I'm going to bank on that. And I think that number is actually higher in financial services because I do think we have a due diligence issue there. We're kind of like, I just got to tell. So here's the thing. If you helped 187 people and you tell me 190, I'm not coming for you. I mean, I just can't do that. Right. But I will say that if somebody says they helped 3,000 people and I know that I never saw anything, or I might come back and be like, hey, could you? So, you know what I mean? It's kind of have to be a little bit of a trust system on that part. So, because I have been asked that question, I want to be very transparent. That said, I think that I go back to the Weight Watchers analogy. When you go to Weight Watchers, you're not allowed to say, I only lost 1 pound. Every pound counts. Every person counts. You can't say I only helped. I love Judy has been on this mission forever since I've known her to help one woman a day. One woman a day, one. And that you would think at first, what? But look at where she's at. She's helped tens of thousands of women now. That becomes a really important principle to the reporting part of how you get it back to us. Okay. As for the support, the ongoing webinars like this, dialogue, most definitely has to happen because we need to talk about what has worked and we have to talk about what has not worked so that people don't make the same mistakes. One of the things I love that people do in our organization is when something does, like, for example, you guys have all seen this where somebody comes in and says, I'm thinking about doing this event. Girl, let me tell you, everybody comes on and says, don't do that. That's going to cost you a lot of money. You're not going to get the return. Or if it's a really good event, they'll be like, yes, slow clap. Absolutely. I did this and this is, but tweak this. That's what these webinars will do, is listen to what you want to do. And you will be like, yeah, I don't think your return is going to be too high on that one. You can try it if you like, but our history has told us that's been not a good, spend. I think that's valuable. I think that part is just as valuable as, hey, I did this and it went gangbusters and was great. I think that kind of stuff becomes really critical to the follow-up webinar. Jen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think one of the reasons we're doing, like I said earlier, was community, right? We believe that, and as Cheryl said to the crowdsourcing of the community, we believe that there's a lot we can learn from each other. And by bringing people together on a regular basis, we can have those conversations. And if there are even specific subgroups that need to be created because there are certain characteristics of organizations that could figure something out together because they want to collaborate on something, we want to be able to facilitate that as well. So as we look at, how often to bring folks together, I think, I don't know, Cheryl, have we?
Yeah, I think a quarterly basis is pretty reasonable, and they need to be 30 minutes or less because people's time is just so valuable today. And I think if it was something that we needed to have, something more important or pressing, then we would, definitely make certain that we would be like, hey, you need to show up to this. One of the things I was asked at Riskalyze was, are you going to have a mandatory meeting? Like we have to mandate that they come? No, I am absolutely never going to do that. I think that that's just disrespectful of your space. Definitely disrespectful of mine because I know you're going to be coming there a little hateful, and I want you there. I want you here happy. But what I will say is, if it's worth your time, I will tell you it's worth your time to watch this. And I hope as a professional to another professional, you hear me say, I really think you should listen to this. I think one of the other things too, because of that, the way that survey is filled out, and we ask you in the survey, what is it that you want to learn more about, right? Well, if that's the case, guess what? If we have a particular webinar or training on something and you filled that out, you're probably going to get tagged like, hey, this is one of the areas you said you wanted to improve in. You may want to make room for that. If you can't, please consider sending somebody else from the company that can come back to you and say, hey, this was information that was received and we probably could make changes here, wherever. I don't care on that side. That's on your side of it. But make the effort, because we're going to make the effort to provide training on the things that you all have asked for. But I'm not going to mandate anybody has to come. There'll always be replays. I love the replay because you can run it at 1.5 faster.
Cheryl, I think one of the other things, and Jen, same thing. I think one of the other things you have to remember is starting this off, you're going to have a lot of people second guessing themselves. Am I supposed to do this? Is it supposed to be like that? And I think that if you have something about mindset something to give them and say, you're good with this and whatever. Because, when Cheryl said I help one woman a day, I truly believe that. So if I was doing an event and one person showed up, I'm good. But that's my mindset. Otherwise, because you hear, and especially, in this industry, if you don't get in front of 10,000 people, at an event, then it's like, well, it wasn't so hot. Yes, it was, because the people that are supposed to be there to hear you are there.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe if there's something to read, an article about mindset or somebody to talk about mindset, I think that's going to be really helpful, especially in the beginning, getting everybody over that hump.
Amen. Jim, you came off of mute.
Yes, I wanted to weigh in here a little bit. I've been kind of observing. I did find you guys at Riskalyze.
Mhm.
I want to thank you, Cheryl, for what you're doing. I've and all of you, and I've noticed a big need for this for a long time. I've been in this industry for a number of years. I've raised two girls. We're now in their 20s. One of them did become a CFP and has, I hope, temporarily left the industry. So what Linda was talking about how do we keep women in the industry? And I'm going to talk to her more about that. She's getting ready to go do missionary work for a while. So hopefully she'll come into our organization. She worked for a large RIA, and I think maybe the environment there wasn't that conducive to them. But I'm going to see if I can find that out a little bit better. But I've noticed from over the years going to meetings, and I'd be in a luncheon with 45 people, and there'd be 3 women, and now it's great to see when I go to these conferences that half of the audience is women. And I think that's great. And I've always been a big proponent of trying to bring women into the industry. I hired a young lady. She came to me when she was like 23, and now she's 31. I've made her my managing director. She is on her second maternity leave as of Friday. And so she's been working a lot at home. So the flexibility for that I've given her has been great for her and for our organization as a whole. And so she's doing a great job juggling the family and the work aspect of it. And my biggest question, and now we did just bring in two young ladies just out of college as well that know nothing about this industry. So, my role that I want to be is to be a mentor to them. So I'm going to ask for help in trying to figure out how to do that in the best way. So wherever you guys can help me with that. But I also noticed that how do we get the word out to young people in general, but women in particular, even in the high schools, is to know that this is a very valid career. Because I talk to young ladies that, they're in their 3rd, 4th year of college, and they're a nursing student, or they're going into education or teaching. And those are awesome professions, and we need those types of things, but they have no idea. Even the financial planning students I talked to, they didn't know about this career when they went to college. They just found it there. So how do we get into the high schools to let young people and women in particular know that this is a very good career for them? And that's where I would like to have help and maybe be able to do and go into local high schools and even all girls high schools and say, this is a career you should look at.
It's interesting. And I appreciate that. And Jim, I don't know if you remember working with me at Ash Brokerage. I used to come down to CFD.
Oh my gosh. No, I don't remember
Cheryl
that.
Brown. That's why you don't remember it. So
yeah. Yes.
I'm
Sorry.
like, me. We know
I
each
do know
other.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I know. Yeah. So, so I appreciate the question so much. And I think that one of the challenges there is it's interesting, career days and discussions around, you almost have to, I want to say, be a little forceful with the schools to say, I don't forget the career day when you can come into a class of 30, 40 people. And one of the things I did this actually when I lived in Fort Wayne, I went into the local high school and I told the teacher, and I had set it up ahead of time. And I said, I want to come in. And what I was really asking them about was how they were using social media with their influence. What did that look like today? And they each had to give a different answer. They couldn't use the same one. So I operated kind of like the Linda Whittick, where no wallflowers, but everybody's going to have to have an idea. But I told the teacher, in order for me to establish trust with them, you have to be quiet. Do something else. I don't care what you do. And so I had this very focused class, and then all of a sudden gamified. Every time that they got something, I gave them a Snicker bar. Sounds crazy, right? But I'd be like, what's the way you can get on the internet? And it started off like the Xbox or this, or that. And then all of a sudden they were like almost in the edge of their seat going, I got one, and they got them engaged in it. And I think that's exactly what it is. It's like, we have to almost forcefully go back into our schools and to some degree take over career day in an intimate environment and say, hey, if you're really good at math or people, this could be a really good career opportunity. This is what I do. Come in and do a 5-10 minute, whatever, do some special questions or whatever. I think that's kind of stuff leading into colleges, because I'm working at the college level for sure.
Mhm.
But I'm just like you, Jim. I'm so open to how do we get inside of those schools, because I believe there's some companies, some individuals out there that are doing it really, really well. And we could replicate that. Like, Andy Andrews says, the butterfly effect, flap that wing across the country and use that same type of training within our schools. I want to be respectful of time because I know we're coming up on the end of this, but I really appreciate that question more deeply than you probably realize, because I think it's going to take all of us.
Yeah.
And Bonnie, yes, I am very familiar with that particular program, and they're on my hit list. So thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah.
You can see it in the chat box.
Karina works in our company and she's at the executive level, and I'd be happy to make an introduction if you don't
Please
already
do.
know her. Sure.
Yeah, please do. Jen, what's some parting words here so we can get people, because I want to make certain to be respectful of the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as you said, we're here to help. So if you have taken the pledge, if you are thinking about taking the pledge, we don't want this to be scary. We want all of us to do this together. So community is important to all of this. So please let us know if there's something you need, if it's a program that you don't understand what it is, if it's data or just want to talk about something. Jim, I think with your daughter, obviously giving her a community, if she wants to have a conversation with someone from Females in Finance, I'm always happy to share some of my thoughts on what I've learned, but we're here, right? So let's make sure that folks don't feel like this is something that is that they're doing alone. And I think it is extremely ambitious, as Cheryl said. So I think it's going to take a lot of courage and community to get it done. So that's what we're here for.
I agree. And I appreciate your time. The fact that you're sitting here says you want to make change happen. You're change makers. We need you. We need you so much, and we need your influence in that space as well. So whatever we can do to be supportive, I really mean that. Some people say it. I truly mean it. I think anybody on here who knows me well knows I'm serious. So don't be shy. We will have a reporting page. It'll come open soon. I will have a replay of this. One of the things we're building right now out is a standalone page just for our Fearless Pledge takers. So you do have to register on our site, but then you can get access to it from there. And with that, I'm going to give you back 1 whole minute of your day for yourselves. Thank you so much.
Cheryl, can I say one more thing? If you know anybody who might be interested, make sure you spread the word. That's the other thing that's super important. Okay?
Please do that.
All
All right.
Let's get out there. Thank you.
All right. Bye,
Bye,
friends. Take care of
everyone.
yourselves.